Andragogical learning. Malcolm Knowles developed a new theory in the context of adult learners, as opposed to pedagogical learning. The key difference is that the role of the teacher is minimized in this type of learning, and it is assumed that if someone fails to learn, it is his own fault and not that of the teacher. Anomalous, semantically ill-formed. Example, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Anomaly, a violation of semantic rules resulting in expressions that seem nonsensical. Example, the verb crumpled the milk. Anomia, a form of aphasia in which patients have word-finding difficulties. Antecedent, a noun phrase with which a pronoun is coreferential. Example, the man who is eating is the antecedent of the pronoun himself in the sentence the man who is eating bit himself. Anterior, a phonetic feature of consonants whose place of articulation is in front of the palato-alveolar area, including labials, interdentals, and alveolars. Antonymic pair, two words that are pronounced the same, i.e., homonyms, but spelled differently and whose meanings are opposite. Example, raise and raise. See autoantonym. Antonyms, words that have the opposite meaning. Words that are opposite with respect to one of their semantic properties. Example, tall/short are both alike in that they describe height, but opposite in regard to the extent of the height. See gradable pair, complementary pair, relational opposites. Black/white. Sweet/sour. Hot/cold. Aphasia, language loss or disorder following brain damage. Aphrasiology, the study of linguistics patterns based upon brain injuries. Approximants, sounds in which the articulators have a near frictional closeness, but no actual friction occurs. Example, W, J, R, and L. In English, where the first three are central approximants, and L is a lateral approximant. Arbitrary, describes the property of language, including sign language, whereby there is no natural or intrinsic relationship between the way a word is pronounced or signed and its meaning. Arc, part of the graphical depiction of a transition network represented as an arrow, often labeled, connecting two nodes. See node, transition network. Argot, the specialized words used by a particular group, such as pilots or linguists. Example, morphophonemics in linguistics. Secret languages used by individuals, thieves, tradesmen, etc. to prevent others knowing what they are talking about. Argument structure, the various noun phrase that occur with particular verbs, called its arguments. Example, intransitive verbs take a subject NP only. Transitive verbs take both a subject and direct object NP. Arguments, the various noun phrases that occur with a verb. Example, Jack and Jill are arguments of loves in Jack loves Jill. Article, one of several subclasses of determiners. Example, the, a. Articulation, an act or the process of articulating, the articulation of a form, the articulation of a new thought. The movement of the tongue, lips, jaw, and other speech organs, the articulators, in order to make speech sounds. Articulatory setting, the articulatory setting is considered to be the overall posture of the organs of speech typical of a particular language or dialect. Articulatory settings are the long-term articulatory postures that make up the global properties of accents. Articulatory phonetics, the study of how the vocal tract produces speech sounds, the physiological characteristics of speech sounds. Articulatory phonics, how sounds are spoken. Aspirated, describes a voiceless stop produced with a puff of air that results when the vocal cords remain open for a brief period after the release of the stop. Example, the ph, in pit. See unaspirated. Assimilation, makes neighboring sounds more similar by duplicating property. A phonological process that changes feature values of segments to make them more similar, also called feature spreading rules. Asterisk, the symbol asterisk used to indicate ungrammatical or anomalous examples. Example, asterisk cried the baby, asterisk sincerity dances, also used in historical and comparative linguistics to represent a reconstructed form. Atomistic approach attempts to analyze language into parts, such as grammatical structures or functional exponents. Focuses on what the learner needs to know to communicate well. Auditory learning style will prefer auditory stimuli to learn. He or she prefers verbal instructions from the teacher, enjoys plays, dialogues, debates and discussions, likes to solve problems by talking about them and uses rhythm and sound as memory aids. Auditory phonetics, how people perceive sounds. The study of the perception of speech sounds. Autoantonym, a word that has two opposite meanings, example, cleave, to split apart, or to cling together. See antonymic pair. Automatic machine translation, the use of computers to translate from one language to another. See source language, target language. Auxiliary, a syntactic category containing auxiliary verbs and abstract tense morphemes that functions as the head of a sentence, s. It is also called INFL. INFL is a functional head containing, in English, auxiliary verbs and/or tense and/or agreement features. More recently, INFL has been reinterpreted as a conflation of two separate heads, AGR, agreement, and T, tense. Auxiliary verb, verbal elements, traditionally called helping verbs, that co-occur with and qualify. E.g. have, had, do, etc. Babbling, speech sounds produced in the first few months after birth that gradually come to include only sounds that occur in the language of the household. Deaf children babble with hand gestures. Baby talk, a certain style of speech that many adults use when speaking to children that includes among other things exaggerated intonation. See motherese, child-directed speech, CDS. Back formations, creation of a new word by removing an affix from an old word, example, donate from donation, or by removing what is mistakenly considered an affix, example, edit from editor. Backtracking, the process of undoing an analysis, usually a top-down analysis, when sensory data indicates it has gone awry, and beginning again at a point where the analysis is consistent with the data, example, in the syntactic analysis of the little orange car sped, analyzing orange as a noun, and later reanalyzing it as an adjective. See top-down processing. Barrett's taxonomy, levels to measure a student's understanding of reading. Appreciation, gaining insight and applying information for the reading material to new situations that evoke an emotional response. Evaluation, students make judgments in light of the material. Sequential, students question something that is wrong. This tells us he is able to recognize and reorganize the information in a reading passage in a different way from the original. Inference, students respond to information implied but not directly stated. Reorganization, students organize or order the information in a different way than it was presented. Literal, lowest, students identify information directly stated. Base, any root or stem to which an affix is attached. Basic structures of a sentence, deep structure, derived structure and surface structure. Bidialectal, persons who know one or more dialects and speak the one most appropriate to the sociolinguistic context, often mixing the several dialects. See code switching. Bilabial, a sound articulated by bringing both lips together. Bilingual language acquisition, the more or less simultaneous acquisition of two or more languages before the age of 3 years such that each language is acquired with native competency. Bilingual maintenance, BM, education programs that aim to maintain competence in both languages for the entire educational experience. Bilingualism, the ability to speak two, or more, languages with native or near-native proficiency, either by an individual speaker, individual bilingualism, or within a society, societal bilingualism. Bird song, a complex pattern of notes used to mark territory and to attract mates. Bird call, one or more short notes that convey messages associated with the immediate environment, such as danger, feeding, nesting, and flocking. Blend, a word composed of the parts of more than one word, example, smog from smoke plus fog. Two words mixed together to make one. Brunch, sitcom, motel, etc. Blocked, a derivation that is prevented by a prior application of morphological rules, example, when commune plus ist entered the language, words such as commune plus ite, as in Trotsky plus ite, or commune plus ian, as in grammar plus ian, were not needed and were not formed. Bloom's taxonomy, in the revised taxonomy the 6 levels include, simplified here. Remembra, recognizing. Recalling. Understanda, interpreting. Exemplifying. Classifying. Summarizing. Inferring. Comparing. Explaining. Apply. Executing. Implementing. Analysia, differentiating. organizing, attributing, evaluatia, checking, critiquing, create, generating, planning, producing,